Today is Tuesday, December the 26th, 2017. Hello, and welcome to a special report on Winter Solstice 2017 and Saturn entering Capricorn. This special report covers a longer time frame than my usual weekly report. It's meant to be informative and to be a meditation on the energy of the moment we are living in, and for the next 3 months until March 21st, 2018. It's not a comprehensive discussion on Saturn and Capricorn, but a focus on what is happening now with Saturn, now that it has just entered Capricorn, and how that plays heavily into the chart of the winter solstice. You'll see here Saturn and the Sun are at 0 degrees of Capricorn right at the start of the winter solstice, and that plays heavily into this chart. So before I get started, I just wanted to say, please feel free to leave any comments or questions you have in the comments section. Please share your insights. I'd love to see more of that on this channel. So on the screen, we got a chart for December the 21st, which was the winter solstice. I've made it so that we've got 0 degrees Aries on the ascendant. It helps in the discussion. And Saturn entered Capricorn just 2 days earlier on the 19th. And then also on the winter solstice, we had the aspect Sun conjunct Saturn. And that aspect was the astrological event to mark the beginning of the cycle. And whenever an outer planet enters a sign, we wait until the Sun conjunction to see the event which marks the start of the new cycle. Well, we only had to wait 2 days after the Sun entered Capricorn for the Sun conjunction, Saturn entered Capricorn for the Sun conjunction, and true to form, a big event occurred which gives us a perfect idea of what is to come in this cycle. The event was this: on December the 21st, Donald Trump issued an executive order seizing the assets of human rights abusers. I'll leave several links to this story in the description, but it's an extremely important story. It's gotten little or no coverage on the mainstream media, but the alternative news is all over this, because a lot of people realize how significant it is. It's all about taking down the deep state. And these deep state operatives are all involved in child trafficking and pedophilia. And this executive order enables the government to seize their assets. Basically, it's going to bring down the deep state in this country by taking away their money. The old guard is being thrown out. The fools, they never thought they could get caught. So the upshot is Saturn in Capricorn has made its mark. It's shown us what it's going to do. And it's so nice that whenever a planet enters its native sign, like we have here, it shows the true qualities of that sign. And they won't be denied. The qualities of Capricorn, such as high moral standards, respect, dignity, duty and responsibility, and integrity, will not be denied, regardless of politics. This is a very encouraging sign, one that should give us a lot of hope for the next coming 2.5 years. We can depend on something once again. We can have faith that the world is not being led into hell by a group of Satan-worshipping pedophiles. So, let's talk about this in regards to this 12-step process, because I've mentioned this a lot. I say that Saturn is beginning its first step. Well, the 12-step process that begins with Aries really only applies to Mars, which rules Aries, but it gives us an idea of the qualities of the theme of the overall process. But the 12-step process for Saturn begins right here in Capricorn. So for Saturn, it sort of feels like Aries, because that's what the first step feels like for every planet when it enters its native sign. So Saturn entering its first step in the 12-step process, this represents a time of new beginnings for all of us. A time when many things of the past are let go and we can start fresh. It may not seem that way. Saturn can be cold and inhibited. But you may not feel like we are starting a new phase. But we are, and it's a very important phase. And it's the phase of crossing the threshold from the third to the fourth quadrant. As we see here, Saturn coming into the fourth quadrant, starting with Capricorn. Now the first quadrant, 1 through 3, that's all about self-development. And the second quadrant is about self-expression. The third quadrant is self-expansion. And when we get to this fourth quadrant here, it's about self-transcendence, kind of getting over yourself. I would say that the first 3 quads are about discovering and expressing yourself, and the fourth is where you get over yourself, so to speak. It's where you overcome the limitations of self and seek to play a role in society. Where you have a career, 10th house, associates in the 11th house, and ultimately you find your relation to the collective here in the 12th house. This requires eliminating the lower elements of the ego. This is symbolized by the square to Aries. At 0 degrees Aries, you'll see. So Saturn at 0 degrees Capricorn, it squares that 0 degrees Aries point. And that's symbolizing a cutting away of the lower elements of the ego. So from this, we get the concept that now is a time of acting more mature and taking more responsibility for your life and your personal happiness in this world. Very important, because despite Saturn being kind of cold and very authoritative, what Saturn is ultimately trying to do is bring you happiness. That is the goal of Saturn. So that's really where all this is leading. And as we cross over the threshold, we need to let go of the immature elements of our character and get serious about life. The time for playing with ideas, Saturn in Sagittarius for the last 2.5 years, well, that's over. And now the real work begins. What the 9th house envisions, okay, so we're not throwing away what we learned there. The wisdom we gained over the last 2.5 years is very important. What the 9th house envisions, the 10th house brings down to earth. And that's from the book, The 12 Houses by Howard Sasportas. I recommend that one. It's really good. My father often described the 10th house and midheaven as the point you respect the most in your chart. Okay, it represents what you see as your highest potential in this world, what will give you the most happiness in life. So that is what everyone is looking to achieve now. This threshold point, right here at 0 degrees Capricorn, entering the 10th house, is also the launching point for the circle above this one, if you can imagine that. Sort of the next vibrational level, so to speak, above this one. From that circle above, we get a glimpse of the formative realities above the physical plane of existence. It's where we connect with higher self, or the concept of a higher purpose in life, one that transcends the confines of physicality and allows us to expand beyond our personal experiences in this life. So, consequently, during this time, folks are looking for their higher self, trying to find their spiritual purpose in life. And the next theme is a period of restructuring. Whatever Saturn touches, it restructures. You can just put that word, restructures, in front of every quality of a planet that Saturn conjuncts, and that's what happens. It restructures that planet. In this case, it's restructuring Capricorn itself, which is our connection to reality. It may seem a little uncomfortable at first, because, that proverbial box we all live in, it's changing. But you'll soon notice that we're all standing on solid ground once again, because it's an earth sign. Until then, insecurities, doubt, pessimism, being critical of others, judgmental, These traits arise within you at this time to show you where your thinking is still limited by the past. Dealing with these issues is how we come to terms with and let go of false perceptions. Saturn loves tradition, so you may be encouraged to think small, think conservatively, think traditionally, stay inside the box. But thinking small is your biggest enemy now. And we don't get a lot of encouragement while we work in the hope of future gain, which is what Saturn always does. It forgoes present comfort in exchange for future gain. So we're not getting a lot of encouragement, and we might be thinking small. So I want to encourage people to think big, okay? The proverbial box of conformity that we are all corralled into is being rebuilt. So thinking outside of the box is mandatory because it's not really there anymore. And the more you expand your thinking, the more space there will be for you once the box is complete. So, in all ways, resist the temptation to think small. In addition, high moral standards. Yes, once again, high moral standards really mean something. They're not just an intellectual abstraction as they have been for the last 2.5 years. They really mean something, and reputation becomes more important. Even big Hollywood stars like Meryl Streep don't get a free pass for dismissing low moral standards. During this period of adjustment, we are not as available for others as usual, and we're not as willing to help unless you see that the person who's asking for help genuinely deserves it, because they have good character and are working for the improvement of themselves and society. So that's another thing, is that our moral standards are going to probably sever some connection we have to people who really just aren't getting their acts together in the way that we think they should, at least. And another theme is this ego maturation. I hinted about this earlier with regards to the Capricorn squaring Aries. This means there is an element of the ego identity that must be destroyed now. Specifically, the part of the ego that is not respectable, does not help us stand up in the world, does not have good moral character, and most of all, fails to take responsibility. That immature part of us needs to die away now. This is so that we can incorporate Saturnian elements into the ego, thus enabling us to last longer. The period of restructuring is coming at us rather quickly by way of the accompanying Venus aspects we are getting around this time. Venus conjunct Saturn on Christmas Day, and the grand conjunction of Venus, Sun, and Pluto in Capricorn on January 9th is going to be giving us a lot of encouragement to getting started and getting more comfortable in this sign. I've talked about this grand conjunction already in my weekly report for the 24th through the 31st, and I will be talking about it more in the upcoming reports. It's a very significant aspect or set of aspects, and this is really going to play into incorporating this new Saturn in Capricorn into our awareness and into the world on a macro level. I should also mention that, of course, it's also a square to Libra. Capricorn square Libra, this square also forces ego maturation. Because if you can't be honest in your personal relationships, then you don't get to have an honest reputation. All these people walking around like Harvey Weinstein and so forth, they have this great reputation, but you really shouldn't be allowed to have a great or an honest reputation if you haven't got an honest personal relationship. At least that's what astrology teaches us. Um, these people, they have more like business arrangements, okay? They're more like Capricorn than they are Libra. So, sometimes our ego can play games with us during this critical juncture in time. We may think that realizations are an important thing to hold on to because there's something we gained through hard work and dedication, especially realizations about self, like maybe how you were abused or neglected as a child, and the hard work you did to overcome those problems. All that stuff becomes part of your ego identity. It was valid as a turning point in your consciousness, but you really want to let go now. Okay, let all of that go, especially any ego identity that you may have formed about overcoming abuse and neglect in life. Understanding that your recollection of your past turned into a realization only when you gained an adult perspective and you could put the memory in line with all of your other memories, give some perspective. But the source of the abuse or neglect was not on the physical plane, even though that's where you experienced it. That wasn't the source. So despite having learned to cope, you never find balance or true awareness on the physical plane of existence. Okay, we're moving into this fourth quadrant, the quadrant of self-transcendence. And a lot of qualities about transcendence become part of our conscious now. There is a transcendental cause to many of life's experiences. And because of that, they can only be resolved in this transcendental fourth quadrant state. So those ego identities, they never achieve balance in the physical realm. Like, I was abused by a parent or something like that. You're never going to find balance with that in the physical. You have to seek the transcendental. And that's what we really need to learn now. So we need to let go of those lower ego identities now, with the understanding that they were never meant to be maintained in the long run. I mean, you're not going to be a victim forever. You're not going to be recovered forever. You're going to be transcend into something more, into which you will, you will put all of those experiences into perspective. Okay, and you'll hit that level, that circle above this one, and kind of transcend, understanding that those experiences, they're temporary stepping stones, not meant to live on. Those ego identities are not meant to live on. You're a spiritual being. You came into this world for a spiritual purpose before any of that happened. And you need to recuperate that and let go of any of those lower ego identities. The reason why we're crossing over this is because we're crossing over the threshold into a higher plane of existence. So it's critical you leave behind your ego identity. After all, it's a square to Aries, and some part of the ego dies here, along with some outdated notions you have about yourself. The part of your identity that dies is the victim part, because Capricorn is responsible, and Aries says, I am. So now we're experiencing a crisis to say, I am responsible. Everyone feels compelled or forced to do that now. So no one wants to say or to identify themselves as the victim. It no longer serves you to focus on what physically happened to you in this lifetime. Now the time is to identify with your higher self and the wisdom you have gained along the way, and to seek to become the embodiment of that useful wisdom via your spiritual occupation. Okay, so that's for crossing the threshold. Okay, now I want to talk briefly about the Venus aspects. You'll see here in this chart it's at 25 degrees of Sagittarius. It's close to this conjunction. As a matter of fact, we have Venus conjunct Saturn on Christmas Day. Now, Venus rules what makes us feel complete in this world. Personal possessions, Taurus, and a relationship, Libra. That's why Venus rules Taurus and Libra. So Saturn is also restructuring our resources and our relationship to others. Personal relationships go through a period of testing, and in general, this aspect limits our exposure to other people, isolates us. This is where this is so we can reevaluate the way we relate to others, get real, more honest, have more integrity. The more willing you are to not hide your weaknesses, the more respect you will gain from others. Venus is also associated with our affections, what we like to receive. This aspect will realign our affections towards the new restructuring that we must do now. You don't want to warm up to and spend your precious time on things that waste your energy and get you nowhere in life. We all have to be more responsible with regards to where we put our resources and to whom we give our time to. It should be only to things or people that will help us withstand the hard times. The upshot is frugality is in season. On a macro level, the way society treats women will change drastically in the near future. More respect for the women. And Venus squaring Chiron in this chart pretty closely could bring the final death blow to a major female political figure, such as Hillary. But the Venus trine Neptune, also very close, means opportunities for evolution come from learning how to relate to others in new and innovative ways, and from women in general. We all see the intrinsic value in helping others grow, so it's a very good time to teach and share information that will help others evolve beyond their current circumstances. Okay, moving on to Mercury retrograde, Mercury, which is retrograde in the Winter Solstice chart. It went direct shortly thereafter, but it was retrograde at the time of the start of this season. So Mercury is showing us what we need to overcome inertia from the past. Mercury went direct the following day, so we just missed it by one day. This retrograde period from 29 degrees back down to 13 was a rethinking of the past 2.5 years of Saturn in Sagittarius, reflecting on all that we said and did. This period of reflection continues over the next 3 months as new information and more revelations regarding the truth will cause us to continuously rethink and update our thinking. So try not to form any permanent opinions about life during this time. Once again, we resist the temptation to think small. The aspects for Mercury at the winter solstice and at the start of the new direct motion period are the same, because we look at the chart of the start of the direct motion period to give us an idea of the qualities of Mercury over that time frame, and they're about the same in this case. It lasts until March 23rd for the Mercury direct and until March 19th for the winter season. So you see here, there's just one aspect. Actually, this one to the south node doesn't really count here. If there's just one aspect, and that's to Neptune in Pisces. Unfortunately, not a good aspect. It means we're being asked to surrender our thinking process. It's expansion with no boundaries. You'll be forced to open your eyes, but won't be given adequate explanations for what's going on. So it's not going to make sense. We're going to need to have a lot of faith over the next 3 months. To me, this says we must work hard, even though the clouds have not yet cleared away. We will still be seeing lots of revelations, probably more than before. So we will still be struggling to come to grips with what we did not see in the past and try to incorporate that into our new perspective. It's going to take some time. Like I said, don't formulate any opinion, any permanent ones, just yet. So many more revelations to come. In addition, the squares to Chiron at this conjunction are still in effect. And that means we're still dealing with the pain on a collective level, and there'll be many more revelations about this in the coming months. More stuff to be unearthed. Capricorn squares tend to unearth things. Okay, moving along to the moon aspects. We've got some challenging aspects for the moon in Aquarius here. We've got moon square Mars and Jupiter. We'll see lots of anger, self-righteousness, and some poor judgment. That's the square to Jupiter. We'll see a mad dash for money because it's all the Scorpio. Only squares means it's a struggle for fulfillment. It brings out ruthless and domineering behavior, as well as looks like judicial actions. But this is a good time to discuss the square from Scorpio to Aquarius always revolves around the issue of privileged information, either something that should be kept secret for the good of the individual or what should be revealed for the good of the community. So these moon aspects will cause us all to revisit this issue of personal privacy in society, okay, because it's to the moon, you know, what you really care about. So you really need your privacy. That issue overall is going to be very important to us. We're going to be revisiting that. But the moon aspects give us a lot of passion and stamina and inner fortitude to harness the forces of the collective for the common good. But you got to maintain high moral standards. Mars conjunct Jupiter and all trining Neptune, or both trining Neptune, means we identify ourselves as cosmic beings with a spiritual purpose in life. We desire to dig deep and overcome psychological problems, and in this way do our part to heal the collective. You know, when you heal yourself, you heal the collective at the same time. Become aware of that. We will during this cycle. The ego dissolves as we look for ways to help others and be of service to humanity. We are looking for our part in the collective. That's what Pisces is. You know, where's my place in all of this? And then there's the issue of karma. You know, Saturn rules karma, so this is a very karmic time when things get resolved. There's been a change of the guard. The old authority is now getting thrown out. In the USA, the deep state Democrats and Republicans, along with their cohorts in the news media and entertainment, are suffering huge losses. This is going to continue as many remaining politicians and so forth realize that they simply won't be able to operate as usual under the new status quo, and they're just going to retire. Since we know that Saturn always resolves or pays off in this lifetime, whatever good things you have done in the past may come through as a payoff at this time. Those who have maintained high moral standards are experiencing a rise in popularity, and those who haven't experiencing the exact opposite. You may be surprised at how many things have suddenly just worked themselves out without any effort on your part. These things are now relics of the past and only existed for a learning lesson that was occurring then. So you can let go of effort, as we see a lot of stuff gets fixed automatically when the cycle ends. I realize we're talking about Saturn, but it's best to look at this as a liberating time when karmic bonds from the past are released along with the lower ego identity that came with those bonds. Okay, moving into the topic of religion. Saturn in Capricorn has religious implications. In astrology, we often talk about religion as being associated with Sagittarius, but that's really religious institutions. And sometimes we talk about Pisces being associated with religion because Pisces is our beliefs. But Capricorn has a different interpretation of religion. According to Capricorn, religion is whatever it is you do religiously. It's very practical, not political at all. Usually that's your occupation. It's a very matter-of-fact definition of religion, and it's one that we can all understand. There's no philosophy to learn. There's no beliefs to adopt. It's just whatever it is that you do religiously, that's your religion. It's a totally different way of looking at it. You could say Saturn is your personal religion. So when Saturn enters Capricorn, we are not so concerned with philosophy or beliefs. Instead, we attend to our personal religion, our occupation in life. and you're more concerned with how to get a better grip on life than you are any particular dogma or belief system. In a transcendental sense, now is the time to pursue your true spiritual occupation in life, what you were meant to do in this lifetime. For the last 2.5 years, you thought you were pursuing your spiritual career because we think Sagittarius is spirituality, and Saturn and Sag made us feel that way. But that was just practice for the big time. As Saturn enters Capricorn, now is actually the time to start pursuing your spiritual occupation. The most important point to make about this placement is that the element of yourself that emerges now is the thing that you respect the most in this life, the thing that gives you the most happiness in this world. Whatever that is, you will absolutely not deny yourself in this life, and that's what you're going to pursue now. A new personal conservatism will envelop people as everyone becomes more realistic, self-disciplined, austere, practical, Spartan, not interested in trivial concerns, more aware of the higher self. That's the general theme over the next 2.5 years, but especially over the next 3 months. Conventional views, the proverbial box that we were all corralled into by the establishment, is being restructured. There are great opportunities to recast yourself in a new mold, but it will require a long-term commitment. It won't happen suddenly. It will take dedication. Make a 2.5-year plan and stick to it. Saturn's entry into a person's 10th house brings great rewards and advancement or disaster, a great fall coupled with loss of reputation. We'll see both happening these days, don't we? We'll be looking for who goes up and who goes down suddenly at this time as indicators of what Saturn in Capricorn is doing on a macro level, to see who and what society respects the most now. The courageous winter ahead, what I'm calling this winter. As Saturn helps us let go of the immature elements of self, we have less emotional baggage and become lighter. And there is great opportunity with a newfound courage, because Saturn starting a new cycle feels like Mars, which is courageous. So I'm calling this the courageous winter. 3 months of hard work, breaking through the ice to start the new Saturn cycle. You know, I like to watch videos showing glacier ice calving to put me in the right frame of mind. Now, I'll leave you a good link to a very good one. It just helps you to realize, breaking up the old patterns and moving them on out, dissolving them. Work, with no present gain, but more like the promise of future gain. We're building things to last a lifetime, a new structure for your spiritual identity. The more you do this winter, the better off you'll be over the course of the next 2.5 years. Of course, the dominant aspect is the Sun conjunct Saturn. The next 3 months is all about Saturn, becoming a master, restructuring yourself, getting real about life. It's a time of therapy and sober realizations. We must come to terms with our limitations once again, as we suddenly face closed doors which were open just a few short time ago. We learn that we cannot depend on the status quo of the past. A new status quo has arrived, and it feels like we're starting from square one again. In geopolitics, this particular ending of the previous cycle and start of the new cycle has been very pronounced. The fall of the Tower of Babel was an amazing event. Every Sagittarius-related organization, politics, news media, entertainment, sports, and higher education, all suffered incredible losses. All of the people who could not restructure their perspective, essentially, get over themselves and their limited viewpoints, they are the ones who made a spectacular splash. When considering the geopolitical implications this time around, it's a good idea to briefly remind ourselves of what happened the last 2 times. Recall that the last time that Saturn went through Capricorn, the Soviet Union fell. The Berlin Wall came down. China had the Tiananmen Square massacre, and incredible changes began to occur with them at the same time basically the majority of China's industrial growth began at the start of the last Saturn cycle. And if you go back to the cycle before that, which started in 1959 and 1960, you'll see that's sweeping changes in geopolitics. JFK was elected, and the neoliberal movement in politics that has reached a crescendo at this point, it was born around that time. So this gives us a good idea of how a new authority structure comes into a being, a whole new paradigm, a whole new proverbial box in which we were all corralled to operate. It's just so many opportunities now to recast yourself in a new mold. The same is clearly happening this time. Here in the USA, we have a complete change at the top. While this change is occurring, people become withdrawn until they can find their bearings once again. We have moved into a new phase of both individual and collective growth. You know, we've crossed over that threshold. We've learned to get over ourselves, hopefully. Much of the past was resolved for you automatically as soon as Saturn crossed over the threshold into Capricorn. Already you may have noticed people leaving your life. The ones that remain are more valuable than before. Only relationships that can withstand the test of time have made it into this new cycle. Conservative values are popular once again, but trust me, it's nothing like the old conservatism, which was basically destroyed by Bush. But the new conservative values are much more open-minded and egalitarian in this cycle. A lot of growth and awareness has occurred, and the new cycle is based upon a whole new set of facts. It will take some time to incorporate those facts into your newfound perspective. The newfound wisdom and inspiration of starting a new cycle guides us as we develop an entirely new personal religion, a new set of values, a new set of things we need to preserve as we build a new structure for our lives. Well, that's all for this report, and thank you all for listening. By the way, I'm now gladly accepting donations at Patreon and PayPal. You'll find donation buttons in the lower right-hand corner of the flower image on my channel homepage. And if you're looking for an astrologer for readings or monthly consultations, there's lots of ways to contact me, either through this channel or Patreon, PayPal, or my email at mobilestar7@yahoo.com, or my weblog at tomsocalm.com, which is where I post the transcript of these reports in my weekly videos. That's all this week for this special report on the Winter Solstice 2017 and Saturn in Capricorn. Thanks for viewing, liking, and sharing my video. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Many blessings, and have a great day. Oh, and have a great new year as well.